times now in your public meetings, but I'm a licensed site professional, LSP, with a firm called Verdantis. If you've looked at any of the historic reports for the Braintree facility, you've seen my name on reports going back 30 years. That's how long I've been involved in the CITGO operation here in Braintree. With me tonight is Don Griffin. He is the Environmental Health and Safety Manager for CITGO, and I've been working with Don for many, many years, so we have a pretty good system going of working together. So I'm going to start off. Here's our agenda for tonight. I'm going to turn this over to Don. He's going to talk a little bit about the operation at this facility and what they do. And I'll tell you about the immediate response actions that we've undertaken to address the release of fuel oil, diesel fuel. And then we'll finish up with questions and answers, and we'll get to all of your questions tonight. So, Don?
Thanks, Doug. You guys hear me okay? All right. I usually don't need a microphone. Do we want to slide ahead to the over? Sure. Let's see, where are we at? Okay. So first off, once again, my name is Don Griffin. I'm the Environmental Health Safety Manager for CITGO Petroleum. My region is the Northeast, so I live in New Jersey, and I have the region from New Jersey, New York, on up through the rest of New England, up to South Portland, Maine. I've been with CITGO for over 27 years and had some prior consulting years before that. Doug and I have worked together on the remediation of the CITGO property and some of the off-site locations and properties around Quincy Avenue over the past 25 years. And we've been pretty successful in bringing those to closure thanks to his diligence and his subject matter expertise. So what do we do at CITGO? You probably are already aware, but I just wanted to state the obvious. CITGO is a 62-acre property. It dates back over 100 years. It was originally a refinery back in the old days, and it's gone through different iterations to the point where some of it was obtained by Bell, where you have your electric plant. In the upper right corner there, where you see the blue top buildings, some of it was sold I believe in the 80s to Clean Harbors, and where you see the white circles, those are our storage tanks, and this black. That's an ominous sign. It's kind of like my wedding day, and that's worked out very well for almost 20 years, by the way. So this is where our office building is. Our entrance is here, and our truck loading rack is here, right along the edge of Quincy Avenue, with Quirk's dealerships across the street. So it's about a 62-acre property. We receive almost all of our products by ship or barge, and we receive in gasoline and ethanol, which gets blended into the gasoline, as well as diesel and heating oil products that are distributed throughout the South Shore, and that's what we've been doing. And it's a great operation. The folks there have been working at the facility. The terminal manager's been there for I think almost 20 years, 18, 20 years. So that's kind of our overview of what the facility is and what we do. As far as some of the the activities that we've done involving the community, going back to the heating oil assistance program with Joe Kennedy and his folks and his organization. We've been a part of that for a number of decades. But that's just who CITGO is. It's that that neighbor that's there. This is what we do. All right. So next slide. Are we jumping back to you, Doug? Okay. All right. So I'm just gonna pass. We're gonna pass this back and forth. Jump 2 slides.
All right, so here's a slightly different view of the facility, but what I want to show you here is the key features for tonight's subject, which is tank 15 yards. So This is 15 yard. We keep calling it former 15 yard because it used to have 3 above ground tanks dating way back, and those tanks were removed at least 20 years ago. Today it's just an open diked area. And when I say diked area, that means it's surrounded by high walls of impermeable material, and the floors are impermeable. That's how they were constructed, and obviously that's there to contain releases of petroleum, should they happen. And then the blue right here, actually all the blue lines here, these are our various components of our stormwater drainage system. It's a large property, so there's a lot of different pieces to the stormwater system. Here in this area, Don pointed out the loading rack, that's what we call Area 1. That has its own stormwater treatment system, so it has its own oil water separator. Right about here, there are strip drains along the loading rack to catch any minor releases there. But all that stormwater that gets treated through here eventually winds up down here. So a lot of this facility is captured, stormwater is captured within these diked areas, which means rainwater falls, it collects, it can't go anywhere until a CITGO operator activates a pump and pumps it out. What doesn't fall within a diked area falls within our called free flow area, and that is actually a smaller percentage of the total stormwater that falls in this facility. But everything winds up through this blue piping, and this is our stormwater treatment system right here, and that consists of a vortex separator, which is it's a large concrete structure that is primarily, that really is there to remove sediment. So we want to get, we do sanding on the roads in the winter. We want to get that sediment out and the sand out of that stormwater before it goes into the oil water separators, which is the next part of our stormwater treatment system. And then everything funnels through here and goes out, our outfall right to here. This is the Fore River, and that's CITGO's NIPD's permitted outfall. They have a permit with EPA that requires monthly testing, and certain periods it's fairly extensive testing to make sure that we meet our permit requirements. So zooming in here, this is the former tank 15 yard. There's no tanks there today, but we do have these active pipelines that go through the diked area here. This is the metering valve here. So what that was is it was a valve that was on the pipeline that historically was used to inject red dye into the product. And so if you don't know this, but diesel fuel and heating oil are essentially the same thing. The heating oil is dyed red to distinguish the two, because that is not taxed and diesel is taxed. But CITGO changed that operation, or that procedure some years ago, and so that metering valve is currently not in use, and that's where the leak happened, or the release occurred. Also in this picture right here is called our stormwater lift station, and so as I described, the stormwater falls in these diked areas. It accumulates, and then it has to be manually, the pump to pump that water out into the storm drain system has to be activated manually. And so from there, the stormwater goes out and joins the system here, and then off it goes further to the north to the stormwater treatment system. So this figure shows the outline of the diked area, and then the release area was really contained in just the lowest part of the diked area. But that is also right where the stormwater lift station is. All right, so just to review the sequence of events that happened, we do know that on February 10th, that is the last time that lift station was operated within the tank dike area. Don's going to speak to kind of the circumstances of that and the actions that have been taken by CITGO to remedy that and to improve the process. February 15th is when the release within the tank dike area was discovered by CITGO. And understand that diesel fuel, when it's not dyed, is clear and it doesn't smell or behave anything like gasoline. So we're all used to seeing gasoline and smelling it, and it's very pungent. Diesel fuel is not like that. And remember, this also took place during the winter in February. It's cold out, suppressing the vapors of it. So February 17th, that's when the event at Clean Harbors occurred, and you've all heard about that. I think most of you were at the meeting on Monday, so you kind of know the circumstances of that. February 24th is when a sheen was noted in the water leaving our outfall into the Fore River. That's when we notified DEP of that additional event. They had already been notified about the release within 15 yard, and were understanding all that. And then when the sheen occurred, they were called again. February 28th is when we really undertook, or started to undertake, a cleaning of the stormwater treatment system, starting with the vortex unit and the oil water separators. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more, because I know there's questions about the recovery of that oil, but it was really when we started to clean out that system. We lowered the water level in our vortex unit, and that's when most of the product, diesel fuel that was pumped into the system, was recovered. And I'll speak to that a little bit more. And then March 28th is when we really finished that entire process. And it took that long because we actually did an initial cleaning to get it as far as we could. But a comprehensive cleaning requires confined space entry. It required us getting some materials to the site and some specialty contractors. So we needed to be prepared for that. Confined space entry is dangerous work, and we do take that part of it very seriously. We don't want anybody getting injured or worse doing this work. So it took some time for us to get all the pieces together to do the thorough cleaning. But that's when we pumped all the water out of the system, pressure washed and cleaned everything, and got everything back to full operation. Do you want to take this part, Don?
Sure. So I've got a slide a little later on that sort of lists all the different stormwater improvements that we've made. But as I indicated earlier, the facility is about 100 years old. So the technologies have continued to improve. We're always continually trying to stay ahead of the challenges that are out there. That as far as new technologies. So what we're looking at here is we're looking at a pair of oil water separators. They're in-ground tanks, each of them 15,000 gallons, and they have a flow capacity of 3,000 gallons per minute each. We put two of them in next to each other, so that in a circumstance where we need to take one offline to clean it, the other one is still in operation, and so it offers us better operational flexibility. And then this is actually our site with them being installed. Preceding this, upstream of this, is a 6,000 gallon per minute Defender Vortex unit, and that unit is there to remove sediments and solids, and the water is treated and before it's discharged out our outfall under the US EPA's NIPTES program. So as the discharge limitations in our permit continue to get more and more stringent, and we have some of the most stringent standards here in Massachusetts for surface water quality, we continue to make improvements. We weren't able to do that with the system that was in place in the 1990s, and as our permit was being issued, we recognized that we had a need to make additional stormwater improvements. So we had 5 projects, probably totaled almost $10 million that we've spent since 2005. It was almost all installed by 2012, right? So over that period of time, we were able to do those in succession. This is sort of a cutaway of the tank that we have in there. This is our oil water separator. And so the manufacturer, what it shows here is you're looking at the inlet here, and you'll notice that it comes in, it goes down, And what the purpose is to separate oil from water. Oil floats on water, it's lighter, it has a lower specific gravity than water, and as long as you give it enough time as it flows through this, it will separate out through physical separation. The oil will rise to the top, and then we can collect it. That is assisted a great deal by this section in the middle here, which contains these little coalescer balls. And they are a plastic Teflon type ball, and what happens is if there's oil entrained in the water and it hits one of those, it likes to make its way up, kind of the opposite of a Plinko ball, works its way up to the surface, the oil droplets, where it will form in a film on the top. So the other thing that helps us protect this is that oil will come in, it'll want to float on the top. Anything that's dissolved has to go down, and through these underflow pipes, it's directed at this coalescer pack area, and it should be at that point, it's all going to be floating on the surface, and the only way it can get out is that the stuff has to flow down to the bottom. Oil does not like to float down, it likes to float up. So with these underflow weirs and this bottom discharge, this is how an oil separator works. There's many designs for them. We have 2 of these in parallel prior to our outfall to the river. We also have multiple layers of protection. We have an additional one located up on our truck rack. As truck loading might be the most likely place where you would expect that you might have to deal with a spill, so we have a separate one up there. We don't just let it flow down to this, so we want multiple layers of protection. I don't know, well, hold on, one of the things that before I jump to that slide, I'm gonna go back here, is the, so, like I said, this is from the manufacturer, and this is pretty much true of all oil water separators, is that they're designed as primary separation system for the removal of free oil, so floating oil or grease. The oil water separators, they're not going to remove heavy greases or real heavy high gravity compounds. They're not going to remove dissolved hydrocarbons, and they're not going to remove volatile organic compounds that are dissolved in the water. They'll only remove free oil globules, and things like that. And it's imperative that you do not introduce a high alkaline or non-biodegradable detergent or solvents. You cannot put those in there. I just, to put it in layman's terms, the reason that you put that, you just cook something in a frying pan and you use Dawn, you squirt some in there, it cuts the grease and it flows away with the water. If you put any type of a soap or a solvent or a detergent into an oil water separator, it will put the oil into solution and send it out. That's what solvents do. So they're actually specifically restricted from being used. We don't clean our truck rack, we don't clean any of our areas with any soaps or solvents for that very fact. That it will inhibit the separator's operational function. I'm going to move to the next one here, and hopefully, I don't know how I get to, can you hit play for me, Brooke? So this is sort of an animated demonstration from the manufacturer, and this would be a system that has a lot of oil flowing into it. So what you have here is you have the inlet, it comes in, and oil globules will start to rise to the surface. Anything that's entrained in the flow stream, it could be moving fast. That will end up coming down here, has to go through these underflow pipes. And it's kind of getting ahead of me here in the sequence. And then what doesn't float to the surface here, when it gets to this coalescer pack, they start to rise to the surface. And then what you have is oil floating on the top. We check these oil water separators at least once a day. And so if there's any oil in them, we'll have it removed. It's not uncommon, but it's also not a daily occurrence by any means. All right. I'm going to turn this back to Doug here to speak about the IRA completion.
So when releases happen like this, we are required to contact Mass DEP. A sudden release like this is a 2-hour notification, which means as soon as we find out about it, we get notification to DEP. In the case of CITGO, they also have notifications to the National Response Team and the Coast Guard, because the Coast Guard is obviously very much involved in the operation of this facility. So, you know, as soon as we realized what the release was, and within 15-yard, we had a vacuum truck out there right away, and so, you know, 98% of this release was vacuumed up within 24 hours. So, you've all seen the Clean Harbors vacuum trucks around. They're very powerful, and they just suck the oil right up and don't leave a whole lot behind. So, most of this was taken care of within the first 24 hours. There was some residual impact in the soils, but because these tank dikes are designed to be impermeable, they're designed to contain releases like this. You know, the bottoms of these tank dikes are primarily clay, so it really didn't soak into the ground very far at all. But we did excavate some amount of soil. It was about 125 cubic yards, so put that in perspective. Maybe your average 18-wheeler takes about 20 tons. So we're talking about what 10, 12 truckloads of soil. So really not that much compared to many other things I've dealt with. So anyways, all that soil has been taken off site. It's been taken to a facility up in New Hampshire that recycles it. They basically bake it, and they get the volatiles out of it, and then that soil is either landfilled or reused. We kept a close eye on the stormwater that did accumulate while we were doing this work. So we had a big storage tank out there, a frac tank, and we did pump that water out to the frac tank and treated it with carbon during that whole process. Throughout this whole time period from February all the way through, you know, we maintained the outfall and our NIPD's sampling. So we maintained permit compliance throughout this whole process. I think I just talked a little bit about the diesel fuel that did get into the stormwater system and how we addressed it. So that system has been thoroughly cleaned top to bottom. And it wasn't just pumping the water out and removing the product, but we had a person inside the tank, confined space entry, pressure washing everything, sucking all that out. We used what's called a jet rotting truck, which is really a way to pressure wash pipes that you can't really get at. So they stick the hose up the pipe and pressure wash and pull it back. So it's a very thorough cleaning that was completed at the end of March. And so at this point, we are really ready to complete our immediate response action. I think you've heard the term IRAC, which is Immediate Response Action Completion Report. So that's pretty much ready to go, and we're going to be, you know, we're holding this meeting tonight. We'll be, you know, incorporating the comments from tonight's meeting into our report, and we plan on submitting that to Mass DEP fairly shortly. And that report will also include what's called a permanent solution statement. So what that means is we've gone through the whole process with the regulation, which is the Massachusetts contingency plan, and that not only is, you know, addressing the release, but, you know, what do the soil sample results tell us? Is there risk to human health? Is there risk to the environment? So that report will cover all those elements, and then we'll be documenting the permanent solution, and then that will close out this release tracking number that was issued for this matter. Back to you, Don.
I know I spoke a little bit about this, got ahead of myself, but some of the things that have taken place were the replacement of the facility oil water separators with the 2 units that we have down there in addition to the vortex sediment removal unit. We also replaced the loading rack oil water separator and upgraded its flow capacity. We also did a lot of work to segregate what's known as non-contact stormwater. So what falls on a roof is not coming in contact with a petroleum product. It's not picking up any other types of contaminants or sediment. And so what you want to do is you want to keep that separated and not try to run that through your separator. It makes the separator more efficient at removing the streams it's supposed to. So we did some segregation of non-contact water. Our truck staging area, which is behind the, if you're familiar with the working gear building that's adjacent to our exit area, we had to dig all that area up and replace the drainage piping and put new asphalt down there so that we could contain any potential spills from anything that occurred in that area. Just as I said, the facility is 100 years old, and so there's stormwater conveyances of every vintage there. But I believe we've got most of them replaced and upgraded, and so we've been continuing to do this. We could have through they do a regular inspection of our stormwater drainage basins to remove any accumulated sediment. If they start to notice that something is ending its lifespan, then it's something that we'll go in and we'll replace a manhole, a catch basin. So we continue to do that and make improvements to all the piping and catch basins that are part of our site-wide stormwater management system. So we're here speaking about the Tank 15 response. And so probably a lot of you are wondering, well, how did it happen? Look, it's regrettable that we have a spill at any point, but it is always a possibility. And so, mechanical failure of a fitting on a pipe, released product. And so what we've done is we've made improvements in the daily inspection methods and established routes that the inspectors have to take when making these inspections. Without a doubt, the operator was experienced, and he was certain from the position that he was making the observation that it was water and nothing else. He's done it for 20 years, and he wouldn't have been reckless. But we just have to be better at that, and so now we have a designated written path by which they must go to make an inspection of water, be absolutely certain, even if it means you can't just look at it, you gotta dip a cup into it, whatever it takes. So we made that improvement when they're making those inspections. And as far as our response plans, I know that's been a topic that became elevated with the incidents that occurred shortly after the discovery of this leak. And so what we've done is gone through our response plans, made up any updates that were required. We had a couple of position changes in our corporate listings and things like that. But we have a number of response plans that we maintain at the facility. We maintain ones for the Coast Guard. We've got ones that are required by the EPA, Spill Prevention SPCC plan. The FRP, or Facility Response Plan, is the Open 90 plan, which is the Coast Guard spill plan. And we also have a hazard waste contingency plan. These are all mandated plans that we continue to maintain and update. And we've had a good relationship with the fire department as far as providing training. Back in 2018, we had every single member of the Braintree Fire Department come through our facility, receive training on the location of all of our fire protection systems. They went through all the locations of the products that we stored. They understand the products that we stored. We have a fire pre-plan that is laid out with all of the flows and all of the things that are necessary to have a successful fire suppression event in that unlikely occurrence. And obviously we had a number of years where nobody wanted to come visit anyone, so we've been coordinating with them on having a retraining session because just like a lot of folks, there's turnover and retirements, and so they have some new employees, and we're working to schedule to bring them back to the facility to continue to work in a cooperative fashion with them on our fire response and emergency response. All right, I'm going to toss this back to Doug. There were some questions that came up on on how to access reports online that get submitted. So I'm going to give this back to Doug.
Right, so just, based on some previous comments, just so everybody's clear on how you can get any of our reports that are on file with DEP, so not just for this particular incident, but for all of our historic reports for the terminal. They're all online. Mass DEP has done a really amazing job of putting everything online. It's very easy to get to. The real trick here is getting to the URL. So I'll be showing my email address at the end here, and so if you have any trouble with it, just email me. I can send you back a link, and then all you have to do is click on it. But if you go to this URL here, this is the screen you'll see. You put in the tracking number here. So for us, it's 400. Don't forget the 2 zeros, because it won't work otherwise. 29704. Click search. This is the next screen you'll see. And so just to confirm, here's our tracking number, Braintree, CITGO terminal. So now you know you're in the right place. So you click on the orange part, that's your next link. Too far. Okay. This is the next screen you're going to see, and this basically just gives you some kind of very general information about probably things you might already know. But what you want to do is now click on supporting documents right here. And here's the next screen you'll see. Now this is your list of all the documents that are available for that RTN. So for us, this release at 15 yard, you can see right here, actually let me explain this part. The form name here, so this list here, these are the forms that the LSPs use to submit the reports. So that's just like the cover page. So these are the various forms. You can see the release amendment form. Those are the forms that DEP typically fills out. Like if they want to post notes or comments or observations about this RTN, they'll fill out their own form and put it online. That's why there's nothing attached to that. But for us LSPs, here's the immediate response action and transmittal form. So we use that to submit the IRA plan, a status report, and completion report, same form, just check a different box. But if you want to see the IRA plan, you just click on either one of these. You'll see in the last column here the bill of lading. What that is that's the paperwork that we use to ship the soil off-site. So if you're interested to see where it went, where that soil went, and the test results that we use to characterize that soil, it's all available here. All right, so take a picture of this if you like, but this is my contact information. Please reach out with any questions you have. Again, if you want a link to these reports, if you want a link to the primary release tracking number, so let me explain that. The CITGO terminal has a kind of a parent number, and that number is 4-000260. And so that number actually dates back to the very early days. And so we do a lot of routine work at this facility. We have we have an open tracking number because we continue to do various activities at this facility. When the terminal folks need to dig up some soil to make some improvement or put in a new foundation or what have you, we manage that soil. So all of those reports are also online, but it's just a different tracking number. But please feel free to email me. I can send you links. I can answer your questions, whatever you need. So I'll just leave this up. The last slide is the question and answer, so I guess I'll open it up to any of you. Brian's ready.
I'll start with just one first question. You mentioned the meeting tonight, and so the timeline for that is 20 days after tonight to make comments, right? So the comment period actually will expire 20 days from today?
So, yes, I mean, we have two versions of public involvement, and one is kind of the full-scale public involvement, which does have a 20-day comment period. The public involvement for these IRAs is not quite as specific. However, we're glad to receive your comments for the next 20 days. We are going to go ahead and file the immediate response action completion report, but that doesn't mean you can't still send me comments if you have any other questions about it. I'll be glad to continue to take those comments. Any questions? You have multiple questions, Brian, so you can stay at the...
I'm waiting for other people to step up, but could you go back to slide 10, please?
So which one was that? This one?
Yeah, okay. So, on the fourth bullet down, all stormwater processed through the treatment system has met CITGO's discharge permit limits. What are those permit limits?
So on a monthly basis, we collect samples and we're required to analyze those for pH, total suspended solids, and oil and grease.
Just regular FOG or any petroleum? Is it a petroleum fraction or?
It's oil and grease. Is it? What is the? Is it?
Yes. Right?
Total petroleum hydrocarbons.
Total. And is there a method of that?
1664, 8.
Yeah. So yeah. That.
Who's that?
So when was the sample? So on a monthly basis, does that require multiple samplings and an averaging, or a one-time, once-a-month sample? And when was that taken in the month of February?
So the sample in the month of February was taken prior to the event. The only time we can collect a sample, it's the most specific and stringent state I've ever operated in, where they tell you when you collect a sample. It has to be more than 96 hours since the last precipitation event. It has to be at least a quarter of an inch, and we have to collect it within the first 20 minutes of knowing that we're going to get a quarter inch of rain. So this can be, in these challenging times like we've had with this dry weather, it will be the night shift guy at 2 a.m. on a Sunday morning that has to go down and collect that sample.
So the total suspended solids, is that taken on a composite basis over 24 hours? Or is it taken as a...
No, it's they're
instantaneous grab?
They're grab
They're all
samples.
instantaneous grabs. So again, what day was that sample taken? It was taken before the event.
I don't have that information. They were in, I can tell you that they were in compliance.
Okay. So in the event, during the event, there was an extraordinary amount of petroleum that got into the system. Based on your previous slide, maybe we can go to that, showing the design of the system. Yeah, that gets fuzzy until you turn it on. Maybe go to the previous
That's
one.
the video. The one before is better.
Okay, so that's good. So looking at that, the sample, it's going to go to, yeah, maybe we should go to the slide ahead of that, because
It's going to want to. If you can back that up.
Take it back.
okay. So during the event, and for 2 weeks afterwards, there was an extraordinary amount of stuff, oil, that got into that system. So how do you know at that point that you're in compliance all that time? Or is that statement that you made on the slide 10 just refer to your operation, or does it really refer to the event in the 2 weeks after that event?
As far as the sampling results, they've been in compliance since 2005.
Right, so the sample was taken before the
They're all
event?
snapshots. They're just an instantaneous grab. So as you asked earlier, you know, a composite sample would be something
Right.
which would grab a little bit of it over a 24-hour period, and then you would have a composite average sample of what flowed through in 24 hours.
Right, and then, so going back to that other slide, you know, it just seems that that statement, is that referring to the 2 weeks from the 15th until the end of the month, till the 28th when you took the final amount of oil out of the system? You're making a statement that you were in compliance that whole time?
Yes.
Okay. But you didn't take any samples at that point? You didn't take any samples during those 2 weeks in the
No,
effluent?
we don't, and we take one sample per month.
Right, so you don't actually know, you don't have any data that shows during that 2-week period that you're in compliance at all times? Because you don't have any sampling
I have
results.
the sample, so the EPA lays out what our sampling
Right.
requirements are.
I understand.
So the EPA states that this is sufficient to ensure that your water quality is meeting standards. And they give us, looking at the history, the operations of the facility, and they say this is your sampling frequency. And so that sampling frequency is understood by the regulating community, the EPA, to be representative of that time period for which it occurs.
I understand, you need rain in order to take a sample, but there was rain in that 2-week period afterwards. But you don't have any results, data, that show that that system, after an extraordinary event, was operating properly and in compliance.
Which extraordinary event are you referring to?
Multiple thousands of gallons of oil hung up in your stormwater system.
800 gallons.
Starting on 2/13, there was 36 gallons of oil. On 2/15 to 2/16, there was 2,487 gallons of oil that were removed. That was removed from the tank ad, I understand. On 2/24 to 2/28, there was 961 gallons of oil removed from the system. 157 on 2/24 to 2/28, and on 2/28, 804 gallons.
I'm not sure what the 900, that.
You add those two together, you get, because it's for the same time period, from 2/24 to 2/28, there was 900 gallons, over
Not
900
from the
gallons.
separator, no. The stormwater system.
Reacting to a sheen seen in the river, CITGO conducted additional patrol and recovery efforts within the stormwater treatment system. As stormwater was still continuing to be passed to the oil water separator. Trap fluids from the tank 15-yard continued to pass into the system. 157 gallons was removed. This is straight out of your report.
The vast majority of the product that was released was recovered from 15-yard. To my very best recollection, there was about 30 some odd gallons of oil recovered from the oil water separator, and that was right around the 15th. There was periodic vacuuming events going on throughout this whole time. Most of it was water. Okay, so when these separators, you know, this picture we see, or this animated picture, is really illustrative, but the vast majority, when we go to vacuum out a sheen or some product out of the separators, most of it is water. But what came into the, all total out of the stormwater treatment system was, in rough numbers, about 1,000 gallons. Most of that, about 800 gallons was recovered upstream of the vortex separator. And we've used this, we talked about this issue of the oil being trapped in the system. So to just explain that, the way the vortex unit works is the inlet pipe to the vortex is that the top of that inlet pipe is about the same elevation as the bottom of the outlet pipe. Okay? So what that means is there is water that backs up into the inlet pipe. And the reason it's designed like that is so there's water in that pipe, and as stormwater comes in with sediment in it, it hits that water and it starts to slow down before it gets into the vortex separator. The vortex separator is just a big cylinder. It's a cyclone. And so the idea is to slow that water down as much as you can. It goes through the cyclone, and that's how the solids drop out, and then it keeps going. So the fact that this inlet pipe and the outlet pipe are very close in elevation means that there's water that backs up into that inlet pipe, and this much oil came in and it floated on top of that, and it was unable to fully get into the vortex unit. So it was when we started the cleaning on the 28th that we started pumping down the water level in the vortex, and that's when that product was able to come in. So we recovered the vast majority of this product before it even got into the vortex, or before it even got into the oiler separators.
Hello, I'm Elizabeth Maglio. I am a Braintree resident, and I'm also a town councilor in Braintree. And I would like to ask you if you would go back to the very first slide of your presentation, where you showed the aerial view of your property. Okay, now, with your pointer, with your light, do you see below your property, there's a pool, there's a residential pool. Now, across the street, there's an orange roof, sort of orange. Okay, that's where I live. So, just to point out the fact that I understand you were there, you've been there for 100 years. Your footprint has changed over those 100 years. And someone that should be here tonight, but he isn't, and I'm going to warm up by trying to channel my best Mike Lang, I need to ask you about some recent changes that have taken place. Now, I don't understand why my husband's family built a house so close to something so toxic. I will never understand that. But I also know it looked and operated very differently 60 or 70 years ago when they built their house. One of the recent changes you've made is tank number 2, I believe, and it is out on the water side, and you went before the planning board just a couple years ago, and you were not required to disclose why you were putting in a subdivision for that tank. And that's been something that Mike Lang has talked about quite frequently, in fear that you have some sort of a design for that that could pose some potential threats. And for some reason, you were not required to disclose what the purpose of that is. So, and the other piece is that sea level rise is happening. And in that back section, back when you used to invite members of the community in to walk through, a few of them questioned the fact that the foundation for that tank wasn't actually rebuilt. There's just some rotten pilings that were sort of shored up. And when we see the kind of sea level rise and the degradation of the edge of the water that's happening, there's a huge concern from all those little houses near me and across the street from you that the tank that we don't know what it's for is precariously resting on rotted wood next to the water that is rising.
I'm sorry, but the tank 2 is, keep pointing at the screen.
She's got it.
There it is. All right. So tank 2 is located here.
then it may not be tank 2, or it may be 2 different tanks. The
Subdivision area, Doug, was which area? This area. So it was 2.
Okay, so that one is by Quincy Ave?
Correct.
That's the subdivision
Yes,
one?
this is Quincy Ave. And
Okay,
it's important to note that the elevation drop is considerable from the street level or where the office building and the truck rack is. It's approximately 60 feet down to the water's edge.
so then what is next to the water's edge?
We don't have any tanks in this area. A 100-year floodplain comes, in somewhere around here. Joe's my Concom expert, so that's pretty close to where the 100-year floodplain is on our property. This being our boundary with Bell.
So where do the tankers unload into?
That would be at our ship's berth, which is located right here, and it's better illustrated on the Google Earth image. I'm sorry, I did a terrible job of cutting it off, but this is our ship's berth right here.
Okay, so then I might be conflating the 2 issues. So let me back up, and I will follow up, or hopefully Mike will get here before the meeting ends. So let's take them as separate issues then. Tank 2, what was that subdivision for? And how will we know what you're doing with it and when that happens?
I was heading it to you.
It had to do with zoning changes
That the town was proposing that aren't an issue any longer.
I don't understand.
Can I say
Anymore.
something too? There was, the whole purpose of that was to give CITGO leasing opportunities, because, there's potential for product storage by another petroleum company on the property. And that was, the reason for that.
As you had mentioned, things definitely operate differently than they did 20 or 30. I mean, I've seen the industry mature considerably in my tenure. So yeah, things operate differently. One of the things that's very different about the industry is that it used to be you had a CITGO terminal and you had a CITGO refinery and you made your product and you shipped it to your CITGO terminal and you only wanted to sell it to CITGO service stations. There just aren't as many of those around. The competition is pretty considerable, and there's folks that have found ways to distribute these energy products in different ways. So we have changed our business model over the past 15 or 20 years such that we will lease tanks out to customers. We lease one to your Braintree Electric Light Department. They store heating oil in our tank, and that's their backup fuel when their natural gas gets shut off due to its need somewhere else by residential customers.
So would there ever be anything other than diesel fuel or gas in that tank?
Tank 2?
Yeah.
It could be a petroleum product. It could be anything. But we're a petroleum industry. We're in the petroleum industry. That's what we do.
Could it be hydrogen?
Store hydrogen? No,
Yeah.
that tank cannot store hydrogen.
Because the tanks for hydrogen need to be built in a different way and have a different thickness and
If
is
you're
that
talking
the reason?
about liquefied or compressed hydrogen, they both have different engineering specifications that are beyond what we're doing.
Okay. If you were to do that, would there be a public information process around that?
There would be several regulatory permitting triggers and regulatory oversight programs before anything like that even got moving.
Okay. I'm gonna check my notes and I'm gonna come back to the part about the rotting
I
fuel
can assure you
tank.
that none of our tanks are sitting on rotted wood. They have to be on a firm foundation, and So
It was
the
shored
rock
up.
foundations are of different condition,
Yes.
but none of our tanks could be on any type of a wooden structure, especially one that was rotting or compromised.
It was a wooden structure, but I believe that instead of replacing it, it was shored up with stone. No?
I don't think so.
It
I'm
wouldn't have
gonna
been a
check my
tank
notes.
foundation, but
Okay.
it could have been something at the property.
Okay, I have a lot more, but I'm gonna
Okay.
turn over and check my notes.
I have some more basic questions, but a quick one just to follow up with something Liz just said about, was asking about tank 2. If you lease that, what are your reporting requirements? So who reports what's in there? I understand there were some violations back in 2008 for chemical reporting. So if you lease it to someone else, how does the town, or who does that get reported to and how?
So when I say a lease, it's typically a terminaling agreement. We operate the entire facility. No one else operates any of the equipment within it. We operate the entire facility. They pay us to operate the tanks and allow them to load their trucks and serve their customers, and they pay a lease and a throughput fee to us. It's just a different way that all terminals operate now across the country. But we operate the entire facility. Second question was related to,
Well, so this backs up the discussion a little bit, so sorry about that, but I'm trying to catch up. I don't have the same industry experience as Brian does. I'm looking at the timeline, it's piecing it together. I know it kind of starts in the middle of the story, and then as you discover things, you go back to February 10th. But it sounds like, as I understand it, February 13th, you first discovered some floating petroleum product. And then I think that ended up being, you pumped 636 gallons of fluid, and that was, I don't know how much petroleum.
I think it was
product.
36 gallons of product along with the water. When you attempt to remove floating product from water, you inevitably, you get water with it. Usually you get a majority of water with it.
So was that reportable? What's reportable and what's not reportable?
So an oil water separator is there, it's exactly what its name implies, and that's that if there's a spill somewhere in the facility, whether it's something in a tank dike or there's something at the loading rack where there's little drips, its purpose is to capture and separate the oil so that you don't allow it to pass throughout your outfall. So it's an uncommon activity, or occurrence for us to find it in the separator, and when we do find it, we remove it. So that was the proper action. That's what we do if we discover it in the separator.
Well, we remove it, but we also undertake a process to find out where it came from. And that was the difference between the 13th and the 15th, which I think is probably what you're getting at. So on the
Yeah,
13th.
because the 15th, I think the report that I read, the initial reporting on DEP's website was dated the 15th. Is that correct?
The 15th is when it was discovered within 15 yards. So the 13th, we found some product in the oil water separator. We removed it, but we started the process basically going to every structure upstream. And you saw from the map there with all the different lines of storm drains throughout this facility. We went and looked in all of them to try to figure out where did this come from.
So you didn't report the incident on the 13th, you reported on the 15th, this other related, but.
Well, we didn't know what to report at that point, so we had
It's not a reportable incident because
Okay,
it's not
that was
discharged.
my initial
Yeah, I'm sorry.
reaction. Question.
Yeah,
On the 13th, it's not reportable?
It's going to be a release to the environment, so 2 hours upon discovery from a release to the environment, not within a structure.
right. So there's specific sections of the regulation that talk about engineered structures that are exempt from reporting, but that doesn't mean that we just figured it was exempt and we weren't going to do anything about it. That's when we try to figure out where is this coming from.
Okay.
So that's a matter of our field crew out there taking up manhole covers in every one of those structures and trying to figure out where did this come from. And we didn't see it right away. So in other words, as I described, the product was pumped into the system. It got hung up in the piping right upstream of the vortex, but it had already cleared through the manholes and all the structures in between 15 yard and the vortex. So what I'm trying to describe is we went through this whole process to try to figure out where it came from, and it really wasn't until the discovery in 15 yard that's when we started to piece it all together.
And that was on the 15th.
Correct.
Okay. And you described diesel as being clear with no odor,
Limited.
limited odor. So there was no, so you have a lot, I assume you have a lot of diesel on your site. So do you rely on sight and odor to know if you have a leak, or are there other ways of knowing whether you have a diesel leak?
Well, that goes to what Dawn was talking about with your inspection process.
So, it's still a situation where, I mean, your sight and your observation of it is usually the first indication, or you smell it. When it's cold out, as it was in February, it suppresses the vapors. It doesn't volatilize. It's not as much odor. It's not gasoline, which vaporizes at any temperature we experience here outside. It's unfortunate that, like I said, that we didn't detect it earlier, and I just really don't have anything other than say that it's unfortunate. But when we did detect it, we immediately made the proper notifications, and we had the resources on site within a couple of hours, and worked continuously through the night for 24 straight hours with a vac truck, and removed all the product that we saw that was in that tank tank.
Thank you.
Brian, real quick, I have a question, just
Go
a
ahead.
fast one. Hi, may you please, is this even working, introduce the gentleman here?
I'm sorry.
And does he need to be up here, or no?
So earlier on, we had a contribution from Joe Callahan. He's also an LSP. He works for Verdantis, and he works with Doug and his team, and he's worked at the facility for 20-some years, at least.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that.
So just to get a little bit more clarity about all that, so on the 13th, maybe you could go to the picture that shows the capacity of the systems, the slide that shows the oil water separator. Okay, so here you have these big tanks, and they have an oil storage capacity, oil storage, of 3,000 gallons. But you guys reacted to something that was 36 gallons in that oil water separator. So how much do you normally see in that to get alarmed to the fact that you saw 36 gallons if it has a capacity of, each of those has a capacity of 3,000 or a total of 6,000 gallons of oil? Why would 36 gallons, I would think 36 gallons would be a normal amount that comes in and out of that.
It's not.
No.
No.
So how often and how much oil is often taken out of this?
We conduct an inspection of it at least once a day. Here, typically once a shift, so it's several times a day. But 36 gallons was the recovered amount. But when they open up the hatch and they make the inspection and they found it, they said, "This isn't right. Where's it coming from?" Called in the vac truck to remove it. So 36 gallons is a decent amount. The 3,000 gallons that you see would be what its maximum capacity would be in a catastrophic release that just flowed and flowed and flowed. That's a lot of product. So no, we don't ever want to see 3,000 gallons in there. 36 gallons is way more than we would take action. In just a few gallons, if they see a sheen, they're gonna bring in a vac. If it's a sheen, they may use a sorbent pad. Otherwise, they may end up. If they see anything more than that, they would bring in a vac truck to remove it. Because to get that 36 gallons out, you're also going to take out. We take out 600 gallons of water with it.
And the vortex unit, which you're saying, because of the way the inlet and outlet of it is designed, it maintains a certain head of water inside that tank, which backs up into the pipe and maintains that head up into the pipe. And of course, the oil will float. If you have 804 gallons of oil, it's going to float in that pipe. But somehow, 36 gallons got through there and into this system, which is downstream of that. So it's not guaranteed that that vortex is gonna, that vortex itself, I assume at the top of the vortex unit, it has space for 525 gallons of oil to be, so the 804, if it did get through, it would have gone into this tank, the vortex unit, get held up to the amount of 525 gallons. If you look at that on a daily basis, it would have been discovered or whatever. You would have pumped that out. So I'm going to get to my point in a minute. You also, with that 636 initial gallons of waste,
Water.
it's water and oil. It's actually, it was recorded on the manifest as a waste gasoline mixture. That's the way it went out of your property, is a waste gasoline mixture. And this is the concern, I think, that we have, is that this is great, these systems are great in the sense that they will work on diesel fuel or heavier oil. They do a great job on that. I think we're worried about what would happen if this was a gasoline leak, if this was a gasoline release, and it got trapped in the stormwater systems. The risk of that and the potential fire that could happen, explosion, whatever. I think that's, we look at the whole facility when we're thinking about releases and precautions and taking risks. And Clean Harbors obviously has kicked this off with the fire they had, so we're really focused on fires and explosions and everything else like that. And I guess we're just concerned that if this was gasoline and it got hung up in the piping system somewhere and started to vaporize, could that have caused a problem? And if it did, if you guys ever did have something like cause a problem like that, do you have on-site firefighting capability that could react to that somehow? What kind of fire suppression systems are in place? How do they work? What's the capacity of those? Could those handle a 3,000 gallon spill? Whatever number you want to put on a potential spill. You would hope that it wouldn't be a whole tank, like tank 2 or tank 15 or tank 5. But I guess we'd like to know, as part of the report, as part of the actions that you guys take, that you have necessary fire suppression on site to handle what you just said could happen, a disaster.
So as I spoke to earlier in the introduction, we have a fire pre-plan that we have worked out and worked through and rehearsed with the Braintree Fire Department. So the folks that we are going to call in such an emergency have been trained specifically on our facility, on the products that we store, gasoline, ethanol, diesel fuel. They have been trained and understand how to fight those. We have a pre-fire plan, as you indicated, which would list the fire suppression equipment that we need. And so, to answer your question, yes, we have some fire suppression equipment on site, but our folks are not trained firefighters. They react to incidental fires, or incipient fires rather. But beyond that, just like anyone else, 911 is your call. Those first responders are nearby and prepared to handle the emergencies.
No.
I'm sorry.
So the emergency evacuation piece is a really critical concern of everyone who lives and works and drives around your facility. I appreciate that you trained the Braintree Police Department in 2018, but that's too long ago, and a lot has changed in the 5.5 years since you trained them. So that leads me to think that your evacuation plan, your emergency plan, if you haven't done any training to the fire department, then perhaps that plan hasn't been updated since then. And I'm not sure if you heard, but there's a giant compressor station now across the Fore River Basin, which changes everything for everyone. And I'd like to know what you have done at your facility to protect against what Brian was just talking about, to protect against a near catastrophic situation like what we had and what we could have again, other than call 911, because they're not ready. They're not ready.
You mean they're not ready because? You mean they're not ready because of the training from CITGO, or they're not ready?
They're not ready because there was a fire that was actually small, and the hydrants didn't work. The labels melted. They were trying to keep things cool because your tanks were, what, 50 yards away. Nobody was notified. There weren't reverse 911 calls. That was an opportunity for us to at least kind of practice and flex those emergency training and emergency response methods. And what we saw was not very impressive. And it's no one's fault, but it's everyone's fault. And particularly those who are the ones that are operating places that are really dangerous. And so that is why we've come down hard on Clean Harbors, and why we're coming down on you, because I don't want to be vaporized because the evacuation plan hasn't been updated. I don't want flying, burning pieces of steel crashing through all the windows on my street when something blows up. I don't want to stand on a burning street and not know where to go and what to do. I look to you to take care of what needs to be taken care of, to educate who needs to be educated, and to update those plans and to keep us safe and your employees safe.
So, first off, you just mentioned safety, and so the safety of our employees, the safety of our community is paramount to CITGO. We are not going to operate our facility if we can't do it in compliance and we can't do it in a safe manner. We consider it a privilege to be a part of your community, whether we came first or we came last. So safety is paramount. I can't speak for the obvious shortcomings of broken fire hydrants. The fire hydrants just didn't work that night. I can't speak to where or how they stored their materials. I'm not familiar with their fire suppression plan or their fire pre-plan. I know they have. I can see from my fence line they have considerable fire suppression equipment over there, but I've never done an evaluation of it. But what I do know is that the fire suppression equipment at the CITGO facility is modern, up to date, and it is regularly maintained and tested. So Brian had asked a question about the oil water separator, and because it's a small vapor space and it typically wouldn't store product, it's something that would be fought with hand lines and wouldn't have a fixed fire suppression system. Within the last 10 years, we installed a new truck rack fire suppression system at our truck rack. We installed an entirely new fire suppression system, which has the fire foam tanks, and we also have fire foam chambers on all of our tanks, on the tanks, which is a pre-positioned fixed system that the fire department can pull up to, and if there's a fire in a tank, the system is something such that they would use our fire pre-plan. They have the volumes for every tank and product that's stored in it, and they know the right amount of fire foam and water and what it's going to take to put that fire out if it was a large storage tank.
When you say they, who do you mean?
The fire department.
So this training that they had in 2018, that you think that carries, that what you're saying is that sort of carries through, there haven't been substantial changes since then?
No substantial changes.
So whatever training they got then is what would pop into, what would kind of, they would follow now?
That's right. And it was.
And who did you train?
Every member of the fire department in 2018, so 5 years ago.
And it would seem to be that something that should happen every year, right?
Yeah, it's probably not necessary that it happens every year, but if that's what the fire department feels is necessary for them to stay current, we're welcome to it.
So here's the issue. It's not really what the fire department feels to stay current, because everybody's looking at regulations and practices and policies and procedures, and everybody's got their own. DEP's got some, you've got some, the towns have some, the municipalities have some. The problem is, there are very few venues where everybody comes together. In fact, there isn't one. There's something called the Local Emergency Planning Committee, which I've been attending since before I was a counselor, which is the worst example I have ever seen about emergency preparedness. I don't know who you're sending from CITGO, but I don't think, they're hardly even there.
Never.
And I don't think and if they, never, okay, so.
Not when you and I were there.
Not when we were there. Okay, so they're not there. And the meetings, I can share the minutes with you, they're public. The meetings are about 25, 35 minutes long, and everybody goes around the table. Is your plan all set? Yep, we're good. Are you guys good? We're good. Over there, everything all set? All set. That's about what takes place at those meetings. And so if that is how we're looking to see some sort of an integrated emergency or crisis response, it's not going to happen. And it's why it didn't happen. It's why nobody was notified. It's why everybody was running around when Clean Harbors fire happened. So we certainly can't rely on DEP, because they're the ones that just continue to license all of you. And they're the ones that are supposed to be checking these emergency evacuation plans, which are not updated, by the way, are not updated. We had to get 5 copies of the Clean Harbors in order for them to stop listing Quincy Hospital as the place they were going to send people who were injured. Now, that's a typo, that's a mistake. But when lives are at stake, what other typos are there? How much are we supposed to do as residents to check the work? Because the agencies and companies responsible aren't doing a close enough job.
So I honestly, I can assure you that the equipment and the testing, we test our fire hydrants annually, we test all of our fire suppression systems on an annual basis. So we're doing that testing. We're doing what we're supposed to be doing. We have several emergency response plans. We know who our first responders are. They're not only the landside folks, but they're the folks in the Coast Guard. We continue to work with them. We have drills on a quarterly basis. We have annual tabletop exercises where we go through a worst case scenario of a spill. What would we do? We make sure that when we call those numbers, that's still the correct number for that function, whether 911 hasn't changed, but to make sure that the hospitals are up to date. There's a lot of changes there. We want to make sure that we've got all the numbers are correct. It's a list. We have to write it down. We have to write down who we called and what they said, and if the number's correct. And if it's not, then we change it.
That's good to hear. So we've requested that information. I specifically have requested that information as a resident, as a member of the town council, as I've made official requests. Your plans are supposedly confidential, right? That's the other thing that we keep getting, is that you don't want to share them because they're really confidential.
No, some of them are protected by Homeland Security, but some are not. And there are parts and pieces of them that we absolutely share. They're in the public domain. They're in the town's emergency responders. So the emergency responders are critical. They're the glue that holds together the different pieces. Whether it's a shipyard, or it's a power plant, or it's Clean Harbors, or CITGO, or any of the other industries nearby, they can, I believe that and I think I've heard you say that you would like that they would like to have a sort of a regional plan. Where they're located geographically is, if you go one direction, you go to Quincy, you go the other direction, you're in Weymouth.
Mhm.
And most of Braintree sits out, we sit out at the, at the far east side. So you can't sit out there on an island, and I think it'd be really helpful if we, once we,
What's it gonna take?
we're ready. We put the offer out. We're ready to
Are you
participate.
putting it out right now to us here
To-
tonight?
We are ready to participate in a regional response plan discussion, so. Yeah.
So, okay, we got the agreement from Clean Harbors on Monday that they're also ready and willing, and they're just waiting for somebody to get the ball rolling. So I think that, I certainly have official capacity. I ran for election, I'm a town councilor, I took an oath, and I'm a resident. We've got a room full of people. We've got Clean Harbors and CITGO. Can I ask you to lead the way, to get this started? I will help, the people in this room will help, and we will bring in the others. We can't just wait for someone else to do it, because you know what? Braintree, the town, hasn't done it. Quincy, the city, hasn't done it. Weymouth, the town, has not done it. We can't just keep waiting for someone, somewhere, to say, come together, everyone. Why don't you and Clean Harbors be the leaders?
Please,
So-
please, we need it so
So,
badly.
look, there's, being a participant, but I'm not the authority having jurisdiction. That is a legitimate legal term, and that belongs to the fire department. They are in charge. I can't.
Of putting together a regional evacuation plan?
I cannot ask anyone off our property to participate. We are
Sure you
ready
can.
to, I'm sorry.
Sure you can.
But I can't coordinate that effort. I'd be usurping their powers, and so it really, I would ask that as a counselor, that employee, that we're willing participants. They know us. They know that we have a good relationship with them. We've trained them. They know what our operations are about. I feel confident standing here and saying that in front of you, and we will be willing participants. But that is I just can't take that position. It's not mine.
I would
It's not
disagree
mine.
with that, but I appreciate you at least saying it and being honest about it. I think that if we're gonna wait, then we all might as well just go home, because it ain't gonna happen, because it hasn't yet. So, thanks.
Hi, my name's Bob Durgan. I'm from Braintree. I just want to thank Councilor Megan for her efforts. I'm just a little confused, and that's, you don't have the jurisdiction, or you don't want to lead the way. What do you're next to Clean Harbors next to you. If I had a fire department that was going to show up, that I trained in 2018, I would be proactive. Aren't you concerned that a percentage of the people that are going to show up at your facility don't know where things are, or what kind of suppression systems you have? Why are you not working with Clean Harbors and taking a lead and making sure the Braintree Fire can show up and save you? What are you going to do? Say, when your place blows up, and you have a fire and your place burns to the ground, you're going to say, geez, maybe I should have done more. That doesn't worry you at night? That people aren't trained?
So I don't want to worry at night. I want to go to bed knowing that the folks that are working in our facilities, and the folks that visit our facilities as customers, and the folks that live in our communities around it, don't have to worry about that. We can do what we can do inside of our fence line, but the fire department does not report to CITGO Petroleum or Don Griffin or Clean Harbors. I'm not sure why this is really. It's a municipal action that we're ready and willing to be a part of. The folks that we have trained in the past, and their leaders, they work as teams, so not every, it is reasonable that if we trained everyone and someone retired next week and a new guy came on, we would look to get him trained, but the other folks are not going to put him out there on his own. The fire plan is going to be executed by the most senior folks in our fire department with the experience, and they're not going to be with folks that are untrained. Our hazmat officer's been working for a long time, so I would look to you to ask your first responders that that have this they're the authority. I cannot usurp that authority. I'm standing here telling you that we would love to be a part of a discussion on a regional plan. I can't
Could you start by sending someone to the local emergency planning committee meetings then?
Yes, we can do that.
Okay, I guess what I'm asking is, nobody says you have the authority to put these plans in place. What I'm saying is that, wouldn't you want to be with Clean Harbors? Wouldn't you want to be somebody that goes proactively and makes sure these plans are put in place for the safety of your workers and you and the people around the facility, if nothing else? You're just going to sit back and wait for Braintree or wait for whoever to come up with a plan. Why wouldn't you want to be proactive? I
feel that I am being proactive
How is
by
that?
having plans and having response plans up to date and constantly drilled upon, and then maintaining the fixed equipment as it's supposed to be on a regular basis. I think that draws, I can draw a distinction from, from other events that sometimes, folks, they aren't as prepared. So I can, and we will make sure that our folks have the response plans are updated, that we've got the equipment, that our folks are trained inside the facility, but the plans, which are, reviewed and approved, in some cases by the Coast Guard, and in the fire pre-plan, developed in concert with them, with their expertise, they're the ones that have the authority. I have asked them, and we have been continued to ask, we've asked them a couple times, not asked, but we're inviting them, once they have the opportunity to come to our facility and to do some additional training, and they were welcome to that. We just haven't been able to schedule it. There has been a lot going on, so it's something that we're prepared to do. On the regional plan, I can't provide an evacuation route other than the ones from inside my facility to the points of egress outside the fence line and those muster areas. The fire department and the police department are the authorities having jurisdiction, which in the event of an emergency, they're the incident commander, and they're going to be the ones that decide which streets get closed up. I have zero authority to do that.
Okay, I appreciate your time. Just a couple of quick questions. One is, have you ever met with Clean Harbors and discussed any of this as a plan together?
Not in the past.
So you have no idea what Clean Harbors' plan is if something happens over there, right next to your property?
I can tell you that, become a whole lot more aware of it since then. But the issue is that they don't, it's a busy industry to keep your own house in order. I don't go asking my neighbors. I don't ask the power plants. I don't ask any of the other industries. I don't ask Dan Quirk what he's doing in the shipyard. We expect that the authorities that regulate and oversee those operations, that they are the ones that are responsible. I know that they come knocking on our door on a regular basis to make sure that everything is in order, whether it's the operations or the paperwork. We get visits nonstop from everyone from the Coast Guard to Homeland Security and border security. So it's nonstop. And we have fire department folks on our property all the time overseeing any of the work that, just about any of the work that we do. So
okay. I realize you wouldn't ask it to car dealership or a sub shop. You don't have to, but someplace that could have a fire that could blow you off the map, I think I'd talk to. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Before I retired, I was responsible for the plant operations support group that for over 100 facilities. And made sure that the plants were budgeted every year to have fire training, coordination, discussions, have the fire department come out and practice for a fire event. They'd show up, we'd make a big deal of it, give all the employees a free lunch. Oftentimes, they would schedule that when the CEO was going to be making a visit for PR purposes, the whole 9 yards, right? So I think what I suggest you do, you know, hindsight is 20/20, right? You can learn a lot from Clean Harbor's unfortunate experiences. And I think that what Liz is probably expecting is for you to reach out to the fire chief and say, we're ready, we want to redo what we did in 2018. I've heard personally from fire management in Braintree that they're not too sure that your systems, which you say you have foam suppression in each tank. Not too sure they understand that that is really what you have, that the capacity of that to fight multiple tanks, fires, et cetera, et cetera. So I think they want to know that your fire system, it may be independently, maybe at some point it's going to have to be independently verified, that your fire system can handle a disaster. And, you know, that's not going to happen overnight, but what I suggest you do is make sure that if you're relying on the fire department to do that, that they actually know how to do it. You know, I heard a story, third hand, that a deputy chief pulled up to the gate of your front gate and had to wait 5-10 minutes. And he was in obviously a fire department vehicle. He had to wait 5 to 10 minutes just to let the gate open up. And, you know, and then when he walked into the office, he saw the guy looking at the cameras, could see that he would have been waiting there for 5-10 minutes. And he just didn't get the impression that you guys really loved the fire department. You know, so it just, you know, that's just a story, but just take that to heart in the sense that I don't think the fire department is feeling that you guys, you know, appreciate what they would need to do and have been trained and stuff like that. I think the 5 years ago is pretty much vaporized, whatever you guys showed them. So there might be one guy that always comes in, but what happens if he's up hunting or something? You know, I don't know. I don't know how you guys have set it up, but it seems like you need to really redo the 2018 stuff and also make sure that your fire systems do have the proper capacity to fight tank fires, et cetera, et cetera.
So, met with the, you know, have met with the fire chief and have met with the hazmat officer, and we have, you know, back in March, and we extended the offer to have them come back for that additional training, and then also, you know, and consider the you know, discussion is there to see if we could advance some of their firefighting skills in relation to patrolling facilities. The training that was provided 5 years ago, it hasn't changed. So vaporized is the opposite. It's still a solid plan, it's still written down, still well understood by the fire department. The equipment that we have on the tanks, the fire department has actually trained, and I was there, they pumped water through the foam chambers on the tanks, so the equipment does work. It was all designed by fire protection specialists, and so there's an entire codes of the national NFPA that are dedicated to fire protection, and those were the design considerations that were utilized when those installations were made. So I really do want to counter what you said. We have a fire pre-plan in place. We've trained the fire department with it multiple times. They know how to respond to a tank fire. We've actually trained on site, and we have had discussions and recently sent an email. You know, let us know when you're ready. So it's a scheduling issue to get that many people and to get that many shifts aligned so that they can send 5 guys down at a time to spend a day at our facility and go through the entire fire pre-plan. But you know, I assure you that they have been trained, and I promise you that we have offered to have them back multiple times in the recent months.
This is the third PIP meeting I've been to this week, and I've been to other meetings at Boston University with scientific experts and talk. And one thing that's come very clear to me is that a lot of these companies, yourself included, they're really good at taking care of their requirements. Like, for example, you rehearse your worst case scenarios of things that could go wrong in your operation. And then the other one, they do that too. And they try to be in compliance with what the EPA says, whether or not we necessarily agree that the EPA has done enough or that it's stringent enough, beside the point, they're in compliance with that technical rule. So each silo is doing what they're supposed to. But my question is, the physical location where you are, I'm not a statistician or a mathematics expert, but I'm thinking the risks multiply exponentially when you're all in the same region, because things that can go wrong aren't just things that can go wrong with your facility. There are things that can go wrong with a neighbor's facility that affects your facility. So my question, and I'm not sure whether you can answer it, but I want you to think about it, is in your worst case scenario planning, are you taking into consideration the things that can go wrong in neighboring facilities and how you would handle that? Thank you.
That's a great question, and it's a great suggestion, and it's also something that we take into consideration when we develop these scenarios, because we know that we aren't, that
Give
we're
me
not.
some examples of, like, what you're doing for an example.
So an example of a scenario would be, I'm certain that in light of this, that there will be things that are extremely specific to the events that happened on February 16th. But a scenario would be that there was that we had a spill that came over from the Clean Harbor site, and so how do we respond to that? Well, first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna call the fire department. They're going to be able to go to them. You're going to communicate from them. We'll find out what it is. We'll cordon off a safe area. There's just the typical evolution of what you would do. And so our employees participate in these. As I said before, they're required to make during drills, to make notifications. I get called once a quarter by all my facilities. They even have to test it off hours, so I get calls late at night or early in the morning, just to make sure that I'm going to pick that phone up. So we do that, and I can tell you that when you do 4 of these a year, everybody gets their chance to come up with a scenario of a what if.
Yeah, I don't want to mention bad things, but you know what I'm talking about, when bad things could happen by bad people, as well as things that just happen accidentally. I don't want to mention any words, but...
Yeah, I mean, it's sometimes it's difficult to prepare for, some of these things. I mean, we can see how disruptive the I-95 incident is down in Philadelphia. One vehicle, and it takes out a highway that 500,000 people drive on a day. So yeah, there are things that can occur. So if we were to have, and this is why I like the concept of the regional response plan, is because we then would have a better understanding of what they would expect from us, what we would expect from them. The fire department is integrated, and the police department are integrated. They know the players, and they know how they would respond in those scenarios. So yeah, a regional plan is very helpful.
And I would think your insurance rates are probably based on proximity to other dangerous industry. I mean, like, things that happen somewhere else could affect you negatively.
Absolutely.
And you don't want to have that liability. You don't want to have to pay higher insurance because of it, or I don't know what you're.
It is a risk management issue and a risk assessment issue. So yeah, that is what we do. I mean, as far as the scenarios, you know, the things that we will continue to work with, we invite all of our first responders to them, we invite the Coast Guard, so the folks that we need to get with in the event of an emergency, we continuously drill with. The Coast Guard side of this is, and I don't mean to take away from the land side and where your houses are, but we all hold the waterways and our beaches and river areas near and dear to our heart. I mean, you have beautiful beaches here, and so those response actions that we review and prepare for in our facility response plan with the Coast Guard, it is an extremely complex scenario. So we're able to handle multiple different directions of you know, potential events, and that's what we want them to be, is potential.
Evening. I want to try to make 2 points. The first is that is about the siloing, which we were talking about, this whole need for a regional plan, and I don't think the siloing is entirely on you. I think it's from the regulatory side. So I want to talk to these folks as well. Because when the fire happened at Clean Harbors, it wasn't only the Braintree Fire Department who showed up. The Weymouth Fire Department showed up, the Quincy Fire Department showed up, and if something happens at your place, they'll be there too, but they haven't been trained. And you know, and again, the evacuation plan and all of that. But as you were talking about training even the Braintree folks 5 years ago, I was remembering that before I went into the ministry, I was a flight attendant. And we were required by regulation to come in for a full day every year of emergency refresher training. And that doesn't mean that the airplanes changed every year. Everything was pretty much the same for most of that, but we had to go in and do the hands-on, you know, I won't go through all the details of all of the things that you would do in every kind of emergency. We had to do that hands-on every year. So not doing it for 5 years seems like, even if you really paid attention that first year, that's a lot to remember, because you're not the only place that brought them in. You know, there are other facilities that they've had to remember too. So I really feel like from the regulatory end, there needs to be some requirement that training be regular and that it be regional for any fire department that might be likely to have to respond to something at your place.
That's a great comment, and I think that's, you know, that is the essence of the mutual aid that the neighboring fire departments bring to each other's assistance when a single firehouse or a single town's first responders are overwhelmed by the current situation, that they have that mutual aid available, and so appreciate your comment. Well spoken.
Could you go back to the slide where you talk about your compliance of the stormwater system? Another one. Keep going. Okay. All stormwater processed in the treatment system has met CITGO's discharge permit limit. So, in your discharge permit, in the preamble of the discharge permit, there's some general conditions. And in those general conditions, it talks about spills, releases, extraordinary events. And on the morning of February 17th, you received, between the hours of 1 a.m. or maybe sooner to 8 a.m., you received a lot of water from Clean Harbors. Came through the berm, around the berm, you know, through the berm. And that water had quite a bit of acetone in it. It had lead, you know, possibly some PCBs, which they found on the other side of the berm, their berm. They found PCBs and dioxins. Now, you know, it's your obligation when you get water like that, and you realize that it goes through the stormwater system, it's your obligation that you realize that your stormwater system isn't designed for that, and you're discharging it because you took the samples of that water and had it analyzed. So you had some influence samples to the stormwater system that you had in your hands, and you know that the design of your system could not, handle that adequately. So you had a discharge at that point that was unauthorized because it wasn't, what you told the EPA that you would be discharging through your stormwater system. You were in non-compliance because of that.
I'm sorry, are you insinuating that that the EPA, we were supposed to tell the EPA that at some point, firefighting water in the future from the trailers, that we were supposed to know, which we still don't know what was in the trailers, that we were supposed to know that and tell them that?
No, you're supposed to know that you took a sample, CITGO Tank 15, project number 17495, had 0.227 milligrams per liter of lead. You know that was in the firefighting water.
We knew it about 10 days after we took the sample, that's how long it
At the moment you knew, you had an obligation to report to someone, specifically the EPA because they're the control authority, that water came over from Clean. I mean, you guys completely innocent. It's not something that you can control. Came over from Clean Harbors, went through your treatment system, and cobalt and everything else passed through your stormwater treatment system and out into the river. In your general permit conditions, you have an obligation to inform the EPA of that event.
And we did.
Okay. So, you also this, could you go to the overview?
When you say overview, do you mean
The
back to
Google
the
photo,
beginning?
yeah,
To
the
the
Google
okay.
photo. So when the EPA, when you told the EPA that, what did they say?
They didn't have any particular response to it. It was a notice of, the notice, I made the notice. And
The Google photo, I think the next one.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
The first one. Okay, can I have that pointer? Because I want to point. I had this on my slide, so I just said, you had enough of the same stuff there. Okay, so. Okay, so where's the Clean Harbors facility?
You're on it right now.
Okay, so here's the berm, and there's been sampling conducted somewhere in here, in the soil. Was there infiltration of the firefighting water into the soil on your property?
Well, that's the data that I think Clean Harbors spoke to just 2 days ago, and that data's been collected.
Well, they did a lot more sampling than what they put in their report so far. So they did extra sampling somewhere in all this area here.
Right, so that was their assessment program done under that grant plan that was submitted.
So was there infiltration of that water into your soil? Do you believe that?
It really doesn't appear so.
Okay. Because they didn't answer that question. According to them, their water, they're still contesting that. They still don't know that water actually went onto your property in their RAM reports.
Well, I think the fact that the water came on the property I don't think that's really in dispute. The assessment of CITGO's property is an ongoing activity right now.
Okay.
So,
Oh, you used some time. Has CITGO provided copies of the flow monitoring information? I mean, it's been reported that there was 7,500 gallons of water that went out through your stormwater treatment system, the oil water separator, et cetera, et cetera. So have you provided copies of the flow monitoring information to Clean Harbors to sort of prove that point?
yes.
Okay. Has Clean Harbors taken complete responsibility for that firefighting water released to the river?
Well, I think you'd have to ask them that.
Okay.
I mean, we've described to them the information we have, and we are continuing to work with them throughout this whole process.
Has CITGO asked the DEP to make an official determination of responsibility? Because What I see happening here is you guys going like this. And, you know, so someone has to step in and say, yes, that happened. Yes, 7,500 gallons of water that passed through your oil water separator, which the oil water separator isn't designed to treat acetone, lead, dioxins, PCBs. All that stuff potentially went into the river. So what we want to see is someone say that yes, that happened. Clean Harbors is responsible for anything that went out into the river, including the sediment, et cetera, et cetera. We haven't heard that in any of these meetings. And that's what we want to hear.
Well, I think you did hear on Monday about the 7,500 gallons. So I think we have gotten that out there.
I want to see it in writing.
Yeah, I mean, for them to say it in a public meeting and on record.
Mr. Keegan, I just wanted to express that Mass DP has issued notices of responsibility. That's, from our view, from a regulatory point of view, when an NOR is issued, that pretty much puts the party on notice that they have a process and they have a responsiveness action that's warranted. So everything flows from an issuance of a notice of responsibility. And we often worry about people who do not respond to our notices of responsibility. So all these questions are very important, but at the end of the day, it's not as if the process has stalled at all in terms of getting to all the questions and the answers, in addition to also compelling response actions. So I just wanted to put a note out there that our biggest challenge is for the universe of parties that we issue notices of responsibilities and they pretty much ignore the law. So I just wanted to at least include that information.
So if you've asked Enbridge to take samples of sediment next to their property.
Well, this is not an average PIP. I'd be more than happy to talk to you separate apart or after this meeting. I don't want to derail the meeting. We're here and trying to be respectful of people's time with regards to the CITGO 21 process.
Hello, my name is Margaret Bellafiore, and yes, I've been at 3 PIPs in 8 days, and I have most of my experience with the Enbridge PIP, and I want to talk a little bit about the whole public involvement program and a disappointment in the LSP training for running a public involvement program, because it feels like their mission, the mission that the DEP has set up for the public to participate and be involved, is not really being followed. I was very disappointed at the Enbridge. I mean, I know it's not the Enbridge PIP, but the same thing happened tonight as well, that during the question and answer period, you would think people, if they have photographic documentation to support their question or their statement, that they could use the projector. I asked if we could, we showed a slide, and no, it was sabotage. It's sabotage, and I think in the LSP training, and I'm glad Millie Serrano Garcia is here, because perhaps she could take this to the LSPs, that there be more training in their running of a public involvement program to really access the public. Let them show their photographs on the projector. Arrange for community cable coverage. The LSP should be doing that. Get the Braintree cable, the Weymouth cable, to record it for the people at home. Hire science technical writers. There are people who can take the 3,000 pages of the immediate response document and make summaries that are clearly written for the everyday public. And also these summary documents clearly written by a technical writer. I mean, we're lucky we have Brian, we have Mike Lang. I was good at it at one point, but I'm not so to plow through all the data, to do it in the languages of the EJ community as well, clearly written for everyone, for the public. Omit acronyms from all the documents. There's no need. It doesn't make any sense. I don't understand why there are so many acronyms when anyone can copy and paste. What is the intention of doing that? Is it to obfuscate, or is it to involve the public? We have been, over the years, because I've been with the PIP program over the years, and we are disappointed in the fact the LSPs are so closely tied to the industry. We've asked for an independent evaluator, and I know DEP loves the LSP process, but I think there could be a different system. But I'm going to end with a compliment to Doug Healy, because you're the first LSP that has ever shown a slide of how to access the document.
That's a big deal.
And you used the right number with the 2 zeros.
Yeah, that's a big deal. Seriously, that was really nice.
So I just want to make a quick comment. Good evening. Millie Garcia Serrano.
Maybe hit the microphone. Yeah.
Oh, I said it wrong. I think I said Serrano Garcia. That's fine. So I'll make this quick, because this is really about the public, and you're spending time tonight taking away from your everyday schedules. First of all, Ms. Bellafiore, I really appreciate your comment. I've taken it to heart. I want to see you after the meeting, and I would like to compel the Licensed Site Professional Association to put together maybe a joint session with DEP, so that the LSPs can also get DEP credits. Part of their continuing education warrants DEP credits. So let's talk. You always really come forth with a very positive and just good perspective in terms of what really works and doesn't work for you. Mass DEP does not dictate how these meetings take place, because this is really, in this case, Mr. Keegan was the primary PIP petitioner for both CITGO and also the Clean Harbors, as you were for the compressor station. We need you and the public to really be the real litmus test when it comes to whether a process works or doesn't work. And I know that this topic about licensed site professionals has been a burning issue throughout multiple meetings. I just want to zero back, and I can definitely talk to you and anyone after this meeting clearly, but this goes back to 1987. It was a legislative ballots question, question 4. I wasn't even living here in the state of Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Basically, the department was contending with thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of sites. And we have less than 5% of the overall Commonwealth budget to deal with more than 120 programs. If you can even imagine that. Therefore, that's how the genesis of this licensed site professional privatized program came about. And I say privatized program, and I'm always corrected by my own staff because it's not really privatized fully, it's semi-privatized. We take care of ensuring auditing, so there's a, right there, checks and balances component, in addition to also ensuring that there is direct oversight on the cases that Mass DEP believes have the top priority. You can see John Handrahan has been here, Seth Pickering has been here. This is really on the top 10 PIP rate for us. So we're watching, we're vigilant. I respect you immensely, as I do Ms. Alice Arena, and everybody here. So let's talk, let's get that PIP process training going, and I would love for it to be on the agenda for the next licensed site professional board meeting, separate apart, has nothing to do with DEP. It's a board that certifies licensed site professionals, and we also yank the license when there is a lack of regard and compliance with the licensed site professional board regulations. Again, separate apart. It's a DEP, it's an association, it's a board, related but separate apart and different. So thank you so much.
All right, then it is a little after 9 o'clock. Do you have something?
Just a real quick question. Is there any way, if there are other releases in any of the facilities in our area, how can we find out?
Yeah.
Because I don't even remember how I found out about this one, but I was surprised to learn that in 2020, the number 2 fuel oil spill at CITGO out of a, I think, a potential 3 million gallons was on the document.
That's
So-
the tank storage capacity.
So, and that was a surprise to me. I only found it because I was clicking through your facility on the DEP website. But if other incidents like this happen, how do we know?
Let me just try to advance a little bit further back to the page that.
So we would issue a notice of responsibility for each spill that comes to our attention, and we always carbon copy, electronic copy, the chief municipal officer in the Board of Health. That's, yes, that's, I'm just telling you what the process is in Massachusetts. Our correspondence goes to the CMO and the BOH.
Right, so there is regular communication to the municipalities, but if you can find this page, you see over on the upper right, the city town, that's a drop-down menu, and you can pull in any town, you can put the address in if you're interested in a specific facility, but that will then give you a list of all the RTMs, release tracking numbers, not to use too many acronyms. But anyways, so if you want to see the other reports for the CITGO facility, you could go to the Braintree facility, put in the address 385 Quincy Avenue, and that will show you all the RTMs that are related to the CITGO property.
So look, in closing, before we go home, I wish that you came here. I can understand, I can appreciate the way you might have felt the morning after when you woke up and found out that this had occurred. You might have been confused, upset. You came with a lot of questions. I hope that Doug and I were able to answer some of them. I don't know that you got every answer you wanted, but I really appreciate this process. I appreciate the honesty and sincerity and how compassionate all of you seem to be. If it weren't for citizens caring about your community like you, it wouldn't be as good as it is. So I really appreciate you folks coming out. And if we can do something, with the folks in East Braintree and the Civic Association, I used to come up once a year and provide a summary of all the remedial activities that we had conducted in the past year. And we used to, every question would come up. They'd ask about this and that, and we would just sit there and field questions. And that came out of an undesirable event. And after 10 or 12 years, it was a much more amicable relationship. If that's something that you'd like to see more of us, I will come up and I will speak to you in your community house, wherever you meet, to provide updates on what our remediation is. Because our remediation's been going on since 1987. As you can see, there's a lot of zeros before you get to the 260. So 260 were one of the original sites. There was a lot of impact from 100 years of operation. The sins of our fathers, or just there weren't facilities to clean things up. Mistakes were made. We operate things in a much better way now. But CITGO has spent millions and millions of dollars. It's our responsibility, and we've cleaned up that probably 8 or 9 properties. There's just lots of little small parcels around Quincy Ave. So we've been in the community for a long time. We plan on being here for a long time, and we plan on being a good community partner. So please reach out to me. I think that we can continue to build a relationship where perhaps you can get a better understanding of our process, and I can also, more importantly, get a better understanding of what's important to you and what's bothering you. Thank you very much.
How can we reach out to you? Did you have I know your information is up.
You can just Google it. You just put my name.
What's the?
It comes right up. It's I'm Don Griffin, Griffin. and CITGO Petroleum. It's, you know, in cases of this public participation, it's best that it goes, these issues go through the LSP, but, you know, reach out to us and we will, we'll work on, you know, these issues you're looking for. Thank you again. There's some refreshments out there. Hope you guys have a safe trip home. Thank you.
Thank you.